Okay, we've got to do this a little bit of a funny way, just because trying to figure out how to do this and Teams isn't working, so we'll go through some different bits and pieces here. I'll try and keep this much briefer than it was in class, and then if you've got any questions you can ask through, but I'll be going through the presentation as we go. So one of the things we covered in course expectations was really just the fact that, especially if this is a subject that you want to consider for university, you need to be putting that time into it after school. The basic expectation for any student is about 2 hours outside of lesson time. In grade 12, that'll go up to about 4 hours a week outside of school time. There are benefits to this, which is by grade 12 in March, you're finished, you're done, and it's a subject you don't have to worry about anymore after that. And the other thing is to really just consider that any feedback or constructive criticism is meant with the best intention of getting you the highest grade possible. Okay, so we did have a student who was able to achieve a grade 7 this year, but the big thing behind that was that she was just really open to every single time there was feedback, and really just incorporating that. As I'm sure you're aware, because we talked about it in the past, visual arts and the subject is really key towards people who want to have an appreciation of arts over their life or to go on to pursue art education, say for example for fashion, photography, product design or something else. Okay, if you're not considering these, art is still really worthwhile to you because it is one of the traits which is very handy to have on your CV as you're putting forward, like that you have done visual arts as part of your education, because a lot of office and CEO positions are looking for people who have training in creativity, so because people think a bit more outside the box. The course is broken down into a couple of different things. So we have 3 different bits of coursework assignments. We have the process portfolio, which is going to be the first thing we focus on, about 40% of your grade. The exhibition is 40%. And the comparative study, which is by far the most annoying piece of coursework and the one that will give you the most headaches, which is only worth 20% of your grade. But 20% obviously still a huge chunk. And the IB wants us to break these down into 3 different areas: theoretical practice, art making, and curatorial practice. Theoretical is the big one, which is why this is first. And whenever you're creating a piece of work, now the intention is, what is the meaning, what is the purpose, what is the function of the work? Because artwork can just exist to be something that is pretty, but to get a good grade in IB, there needs to be purpose or function behind it. So let's think of an example. A piece of artwork which exists to try and further feminism or to examine the Black Lives Movement or Black Lives Matter movement are good examples of good theoretical practice because there is function, there is meaning behind it in the work, and theoretical practice tends to come in the initial stages of making a piece of work. It doesn't come at the end. Like, it's no good to create a piece of work and be like, oh, I can kind of say maybe this is a piece of protest art, because it's not really genuine. So theoretical practice is really at the center of all the work, which is why it's the first one. Art making, obviously that's the kind of thing that, making art, experimenting with materials, looking at a different range of work that you can put together. And curatorial practice is how you can consider how work goes together. So looking and being able to be critical of other people's work and your own work, and then also considering how your work can be displayed together. The other thing that we have to cover is academic honesty. This is really important in visual arts because Pinterest is a resource that exists and can give us millions of really, really good ideas. But it's really important to remember that we have to cite sources. So if we're looking at an artist's work, we have to cite where those images come from. So as we start looking at how we put work together, we talk about that. And we need to make sure that we have our own influences, our own inspiration on pieces of work. We can't just take and copy. There are areas of a portfolio where you might have a copy of a piece of artist's work, but you're going to reference that that's maybe just to help you understand the mindset of the artist or to understand what materials they used. The first area we're going to focus on is the process portfolio. And the process portfolio, like we said, is 40% of your grade. And really, it's a good representation of your journey over the 2 years that you're going to do. So the process portfolio is a digitized sketchbook. So you can work in a sketchbook and then you can take pictures of it and you can combine them together in different ways, maybe taking the best bits over multiple pages and putting it together. Now, as an IB student, the process portfolio, you are in a position which is like way, way, way easier than anyone who's doing, say, for example, like an American or a British curriculum for visual arts. And the reason for that is you get to pick the best pages from your sketchbook or portfolio and put them together. If you were doing, say, a British curriculum, like when I was teaching it a few years ago, at the end of 2 years, the students have to present everything they've ever done, all their sketchbooks. So what that means is you might have 2 sketchbooks, which is about 100 pages worth of work, putting them together to the moderator. And the moderator is going to look through all that stuff, and wherever there's a bad page, they're going to be really critical about it. That's kind of like a negative against your name. Whereas for the process portfolio, you're picking the best of your work, so you can be really exclusive. And that idea of 100 pages doesn't exist in IB, because I'm going to click on here and you're going to see higher level students are only aiming between 13 and 25 slides over 2 years. Standard level is 9 to 18. Now that's quite a big gap, 13 to 25 and 9 to 18, but it's important to remember, and speaking as a moderator myself, that you want to aim for the higher side of that. If I open a student's process portfolio for moderation and I see that there's quite a low slide count on there, immediately I'm asking questions like, why have they purposely gone for the lower number? Maybe they didn't have that much work. And it might not impact the grade, but you always want to consider the best way you can present your work. So say, for example, by having closer to the top amount of slides that you can have, shows the moderator that you had a wealth of good work rather than like a real sparse amount of work. The process portfolio is all digital. It's created on PowerPoint or Google Slides, and it can be, as you can see from here, exact copies or photocopies or pictures from your sketchbook. It doesn't have to be created digitally. It doesn't have to be, say, for example, like all typed up because there's writing here, but it can be a combination of things as well. So we'll talk a little bit more about that when you get in next week, but it's the big mindset change is really stepping away from working just in a sketchbook and instead presenting that work in a process portfolio, which is digital. There's some more information here as well that we'll talk through as you move through. Basically, if you're HL or SL, you have to consider that you need to pick different materials and showcase these in your book, say, for example, like photography and sculpture and drawing or painting, okay? But that's not important right now, and I don't want to overwhelm you with information. So there's just some different examples on here. This is the grading criteria of how the process portfolio is marked. Over the next couple of weeks, we're going to be looking at these in a bit more depth. So it's just something to be aware of now. For the process portfolio, there are 5 criteria that you're looking to meet to get the maximum of, I think it's 34 marks out of 34 marks. A really good place to start if you're feeling a bit overwhelmed. Go to YouTube, go to Google Process Portfolio Example, and you can find these examples. The more recent, the better, okay? Because the grading criteria does change over time. But look, we can see, say, for example, like 19 out of 34, that's probably about a grade 4 or 5. And we can just see different examples on there. So you can look at taking ideas. Often these students will showcase the whole sketchbook, but you can have a look at different examples and how they put them together in the layout. You also have the grade 12s that you can ask, and I know you knew some of the grade 13s, I think, so you can even reach out to them and ask some help as well. We're going to skip over this. This was a task I was getting everyone else to do, but not relevant, and there's just some different examples of process portfolios here. This is a really good example because it is obviously multiple pages from someone's sketchbook. We have one big page here, we've got some small drawings here, and they've got some natural writing, which they've done by hand. Then they've got titles and different text boxes that have been put in afterwards. So this is a really good example of what you can do with a process portfolio page. You can have that combination. You can play to your strengths a bit. So our first project, what we're doing, okay, so we're going to spend about 4 weeks looking at a first project, which is called Change and Stability. Okay, and we're going to use this to help us gain an understanding of what the process portfolio is and learn how to digitize our work, as well as developing an ability to look at many materials. The first step that we looked at was trying to figure out what the words change and stability meant. And in class, we looked at, just mind mapping loads of different examples. We did it in groups and trying to think, well, what do these words actually mean? Okay, so we have change and stability. And those examples are up there on the Teams page. You can go and download them and you can, take some ideas from there or try and see the different steps that we're looking at. I want to refer you back at this stage to the fact that the most important thing for IB is that theoretical practice. So this is where those ideas are coming from. So you're going to develop a body of work for the first 4 weeks around change and stability. So they can be very, very big things. Say, for example, like the change in someone's life when, say, for example, if someone gets ill, someone gets sick, what might happen to their physical appearance, what might happen to their mental health as they go through that change, okay? But it can also be something smaller. So, for example, like the example we have on here, caterpillar into cocoon into butterfly. Now, to get a good grade, theoretical practice would want a topic which has depth to it, so you could explore. So butterfly, very interesting, and it meets the idea of change, because you don't have to do both these words, we can just do change, but not great theoretical practice, because it's very superficial, this idea of just like transformation. Okay, you'd need to take it further. You'd need to look, say, for example, at maybe books that document the idea of process. You could, of transformation. You could look at mental conditions, say, for example, I'm going to say schizophrenia or different conditions like that, how people might change or have multiple personalities, okay? And we can liken that to the idea of a butterfly. Maybe there's links there. So the first step is to look at the idea of a mind map. And in class, we looked at some different examples of mind maps and how they can all look very different but be very successful. And on your PowerPoint, you can find a guide there to take you through. Now, you have done mind maps with me in the past, and it generally starts with having a nice big title in the middle and having loads and loads of ideas around it, some which will be words, some which will be expanded upon, and also images as well. Mind maps are important because they're something that all IB examiners like to see. And it's really like, it can be, if you do a good job, this could be your first page of your process portfolio already finished. Then after we do that, we're going to look at taking photographs, using those photographs to do drawings or studies, adding some artist investigation, experimenting or planning an original idea based upon that influence of that artist, and then finally looking at the idea of a final piece. Final pieces go towards your exhibition. And looking at how that can come together. Now, this isn't necessarily a direct connection from here to here, but these are just some reference images of what these steps might look like. So your first task in front of you is to put together a mind map based around that idea of change and stability. So the first thing I'd recommend that you would do would be to go and look at those examples that were shared on the Teams page and to take some inspiration and ideas from there. Okay, if we go and look at the success criteria from here, let's just say change and stability. Oh, can't spell today. If we have a look at this, okay, so we look at the grades from the 1 to 7 scale because there's no 8 in diploma. So original, a highly skilled method to present ideas. So if we look at many of these different ideas, okay, this is not a highly skilled example, okay, because there's loads of empty spaces on here. It's not very solid. There's loads of areas to fill in. This is a more highly skilled one because there's colors in there. There's different inspiration. This one over here is also highly skilled, but maybe loses out in one of the other areas, which we're going to talk about next, which is images, words, or drawings or drawings to demonstrate a clear understanding of themes. So all these ideas should link back. This one is really good because it's got some of the artists around the outside that the student would be interested in exploring who might be linked to their theme of glitch art. Okay, we're doing change and stability, so keep that in mind with your artists. But I asked everyone to look for some artists over summer. Maybe you can link those artists in here. You don't have to do drawings, it's important to note. They're just something that's on here as well. Images, words, and drawings, again, drawings is optional, are expertly crafted and embedded into the mind map. Okay, so say, for example, here, the way that the images and the words are laid in looks good, but here it's a little bit more natural. Like we've got some drawings coming behind the text, okay? We've got text going around the images, so they're really embedded as part of that. This one's a little bit more of a peculiar one because the images are all on the outside, so it's not necessarily one of the stronger ones on there. But like here we can see we've got the images and we've got writing all around it. This one especially, it's almost like a creative page in itself. So that's where we are. And let's see, how long have we been talking for? 14 minutes. Wow. Okay, but I feel very bad for you because you're going to have to listen to this now for 14 minutes. So I'm going to wrap things up there. Please let me know if you do have any questions, but otherwise I really hope that helped. And I look forward to when you come back and join us in person.